a choice ourselves, that's where we fall short. Because it's our responsibility to figure out what it is we want out of life. Because everything matters in the game of life. And I'm going to share stories with you about the people I work with, the young people I've talked to, and the teachers, and what they say. Alright, so let's look at what we're going to talk about today. Right? What are the origins of finishing strong? We hear that from adults all of the time. I heard that from my dad all of the time. Do it right the first time. Never fail, right? Keep going. Finish strong. Cross that finish line. So we're going to talk about family and friends, the media, hobbies, the activities that we partake in can give us examples of how we are supposed to finish strong. Okay? What about fear of failure? That was me, big time. I can tell you something. I struggle with that every day of my life. And I'm going to share personal examples of my own family and how they've struggled with that and how they have used that to their benefit. But being aware of the impact is what's really, really important. Okay? We're going to talk about expectations when it comes to finishing strong. Whose expectations, right? That student that I spoke with was talking about expectations of somebody else because of the ramifications of not participating or not doing what mom or dad or teacher wanted them to do. Okay? And you know what? Where is the finish line? We don't always know where it is, do we? Sometimes we do when we watch TV. We see a game or a game show. We see the end result. We see what people are trying to achieve. But I can tell you something. I don't know where the finish line is in my career, in my life. I could be halfway there, 3/4 of the way, or already pass it on to my next goal. And sometimes I have to be okay with that. Okay? And also celebrating successes. This can be very hard. Right? Life's not easy all of the time. And being able to celebrate what we do well and the journey that we took is very, very important to be reflective. And I'm also going to share today with you what the corporate world wants from your generation, the millennials. Because I can tell you this, I'll share a little secret with you. The adults out there in corporate America are scared to death of millennials. Because you work in a very different way. A very different way. You interact differently, you have different expectations, you communicate differently, and that's not easy for corporate America to deal with. And so they work with people like me to find out what's the best way to communicate. So we're going to talk about that, because they want to celebrate successes, but they don't know how all the time. Okay? So let's talk about who I am. Right? I'm a big believer in, I should throw myself under the bus. I never ever liked adults who I felt like were just born an adult. You know those kind of people? Alright, they don't ever act like they were a freshman, right? They were born cool. I can tell you something, I was not born cool. My mom might think so, but I definitely was not born cool. One of the main things that I struggled with when it came to finishing strong was my own name. Think about how personal your name is. For me, I struggled. You know why? There's a reason why we didn't say what my last name was, and you'll see in a minute. You're free to laugh if that's what you want to do. But I had to deal with this growing up to the point where I couldn't even think about finishing strong because I felt like I was already taking a seat back. Right? Because peer pressure is pretty strong. Right? So here's your clue. What's my last name? Berger, there you go. Cheese. Who said cheese? I feel like I'm back in elementary school already. You can imagine, you know the struggles? As a kid, what that was like? Well, I can tell you vividly, getting on the school bus, and when kids got wind of what my last name was when I was really young, I mean, just walking back on the bus was, hey, cheese, you want fries with that, right? That was very embarrassing for me. But as I've grown older, I've had to get used to it and know that, for one, my spelling is different, so I was always able to hold on to that. But I have to know who I am as a person. If I'm going to finish strong, I have to be confident about me. I have to celebrate who I am and know that, you know what the benefit of this is? I guarantee you're going to remember my last name. So there's a benefit to that. So when I finish strong, I know you're going to remember me. But I have to take pride in that, right? Well, where am I from? I talked about Michigan, pretty cool satellite view, from a place outside of Detroit called Rochester Hills, Michigan. Talk about finishing strong. I just had lunch last week with a family that I'm very close with in Michigan, and the parents are educators. Do you know what's going on in Michigan? Is everybody aware of what's going on with the economy? Right? No? It's really, really bad. The economy is really bad. There was a stat on the news that, on average, a family leaves the state of Michigan every hour. Every hour. So finishing strong can be very different for different people, right? Because finishing strong for a young person can be, when is this going to be over? When are we going to know whether dad has kept his job or mom has kept their job? Or if they're getting transferred, or they're going to get a new job. Finishing strong can be about achieving a goal, or it can be a means to an end. And there can be a lot of stress involved. All right, so that's where I'm from. Well, let's talk a little bit more about who I am, because I think that that's important. Right? Well, on a daily basis, this is what I do. I talk about footprint. I consult and I speak and I work with people during my week about their impact on other people, what they do when they walk in the room. And being a freshman, I can tell you that was always very hard for me. One, I was a very, very skinny, scrawny little guy, walking into a high school, looking up at everybody, towering over me. But now what I talk about is footprint. How do people experience me? That's what I do on a daily basis. How do people experience me? Right? Do they think that I finished strong? That I follow through on what I said I'm going to do? Am I a good person? I have to be aware of that. Everything from the way that I dress, the way that I interact. And I'm going to tell you a specific story about a young person over at Vanderbilt that didn't heed that lesson and suffered for that in their professional development. Okay? Other things about me, I've got a radio show that I'm very fond of. It's a lot of fun for me to do. So tune in if you'd like on Sunday nights. Always been a big fan of Superman. Big fan of Superman. I know we've all got our superheroes or our role models out there. And I will say, Mr. Robinson, if he's in here, I know he won't like this, but I am an avid Detroit Piston fan.
Down 2-0.
Thank you, thank you. I don't know if you heard that, but he said down 2-0. You are very accurate. I can tell you that's not the way I want to prep for a presentation, is to watch my own team get blown out on national TV the night before. But I can tell you something about finishing strong and for me, why it's important for you to know about me. You need to understand who you are and celebrate that, because for me as a young person, I grew up during the bad boy era. That's what it was called, when the Pistons in the late 80s. And it was always about finishing strong. And I can't tell you, when I felt insecure and I felt low and I felt like I didn't matter, when I would stay up late at night and watch them in a game where they were losing and they would come back, I can't tell you how that would fuel me. Because I saw an example of a group of people working together. And talk about working together. We'll talk about that later, about being millennials, because that's one of your keys to finishing strong, is using the people around you in a positive way, a collaborative way, to get things done. Okay? Well now, what was I like when I was a freshman? Like I said, I really wasn't that cool. I would have liked to have thought that I was. I was actually, some might have said, pretty dorky. I was a preppy kid. You know, I don't know if I ever wore sweatpants to school, kind of thing. I was definitely dorky in that way. You know. And I want to show you, I'm going to show pictures of me when I was little. And the reason that I'm doing this as I go through these bullet points is because I don't know about you, but when I haven't felt good about myself, I may be a 32-year-old man, but inside, if I don't feel good about myself, I feel like I'm 5. I feel like I'm 7. I feel like I can't concentrate on finishing strong or completing a task because everybody around me is so much bigger. Has anyone ever felt that? And you don't have to even answer that out loud, because that's a very personal question. But I would bet that we've all felt that a time or two. Right? So when I was a freshman, I felt pretty dorky, right? I was terrified to make a mistake. Terrified. We'll talk about some of the reasons why. And that's another thing about today's educational system. And I'm sure that this has been a struggle for you guys. Maybe not here at Franklin High.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rod. Thanks for checking out this segment of a much longer presentation. If you'd like to see more, check for updates here at YouTube at the Normal Mail channel. You can also email me at drrod@thenormalmail.com, or you can go to my blog, which is at WordPress. Go to thenormalmail.wordpress.com. I'd be happy to work with you and your team.